Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Thompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompsett along with my always handsome partner in crime and this lovely gentleman, Sterling Furrowh. How we doing, Sterling?
Man, I'm good. I'm digging your intro though. Not gonna lie, I mean, it's got a little too much twang for me, but it works.
I like it.
Sterling and I share a lot of music back and forth. It's not my style, but I can't get it out of my head. There's something about it that I'm just digging it. I'm digging the twang.
Aaron, how are we doing this evening? It's tonight is I know from my time working in the industry, the biggest bar night of the year. Everybody's home, ready to sleep in their childhood bed, wake up in the morning with their families for Thanksgiving. I went out and got a fresh haircut for you guys. I poured myself a bourbon. I wanted to feel like I was out for the evening. You guys are my night's entertainment. How's your night as a married father of two?
Yeah, it's been good. My kids are way overtired. My in-laws are in town. We did a bunch of stuff today, so they were overtired. But no, it's exciting. I worked in the restaurant industry for years, and so I never really got these days off even. Like I had to go in and clean up and do stuff when the restaurant was closed down. So it's nice to now finally kick back, sit back and enjoy Thanksgiving the way it's supposed to be. And thankful that we have the show because this has been a terrible week for me on Bill's Twitter, having to deal with that Colts loss. I have not been happy. It's really put a funk in my entire week. And so I'm happy now that we're at this show, the game's tomorrow night, that quick turnaround. Usually don't love Thursdays, but this quick turnaround is going to help us hopefully to get past this terrible moment in this season and be one of these bumps that we have to, forget about and be like, oh, remember when they blew that game to the Colts and when they lost to the Jags a few weeks before that? Hopefully that's just a bump on the way to more success for the Bills.
We're going to find out because I do think, people throw around must-win, season-defining, all kinds of that. We talked about it with the Jets game, coming off of that Jags loss, that they had to turn that around there. This is very similar. This is in a really similar spot where we know the reality of the expectations, the goals. I don't think there's anything that the Bills have from a season-long expectation that is off the table. What we talked about was these losses, the loss to the Jags because of the opponent, the loss to the Colts because of the style of the loss and how bad it was. What they've done is they've taken away every safety net. There is no floor. There is no outcome or result that should shock you now because everything is on the table. That includes missing the playoffs. That includes winning the Super Bowl. All the things are on the table. This week is going to be a big indicator of, hey, are they able to right the ship? Because there are some similarities between the Colts and the Saints. These are teams where there's not a ton of skill position threat outside, where there's some big name wide receiver or tight end that you're terrified of, but there's a pretty strong offensive line and a steady run game. On defense, there's a secondary that you can kind of take advantage of, but there's a talented defensive line. And the way that comes together, can you make these adjustments? Can you pivot and get yourself ready for what we just saw, where those were some of the similar things we were threatened by and concerned with? There's no Jonathan Taylor here, but there's some other talent on this squad. We're going to find out. Can they pivot? Can they get ready? I don't need it to be pretty. I don't need it to be some 45-0 shutout. I need a win. I need you to move on and be healthy. I need you to take the 11 days to get ready for the Patriots, and that game's going to matter a ton. But I need a W tomorrow night. Sterling, what are some of the things that you kind of approach looking at a game like this? It's not an opponent we see often. The last time we saw them was one of the most embarrassing losses of the Sean McDermott era in that early stretch there with Tyrod and when those different discussions were going on of even considering Nathan Peterman. It's not an opponent that's also in their best case. They've lost a couple in a row. They need to win pretty badly. They're at home. They're commemorating Drew Brees at halftime. This game matters to them. How do you approach a game like this where it's a foreign opponent and someone that also needs a big W?
It's one of those things where you have to find what your why is to play football. I mean, you're at a crossroads with this team. You have to find answers from an internal point of view. I mean, I really do think this Bills team, they believe their own hype. We've all been crowning them kings of the AFC, and it's fun, don't get me wrong, but they really do have to. These are gut check moments. This isn't like, the season's on the line, but from expectation standpoint, if you want to get that number 1 seed, then, you got to put some work in and stack a couple wins. But when you look, it's one thing to look at the Bills and then you look at the NFL as a whole, and a lot of teams are having the same issues that the Bills are having, especially from an offensive line standpoint. So, it's really easy in a vacuum. We look at the Bills and, we get, just depressed. Sunday, I was just like, damn, this is just bad. But when you start going around the league and looking at depth charts and how offensive lines are performing, this is an epidemic around the league. But there are some things the Bills can do, and that's one, they can start off by being physical. They haven't answered that test just yet.
Yeah, and I want to touch on, Sterling sort of touched on this too, and Greg, to your point of, the Bills have taken away that safety net. I do feel like that is really the whole NFL doesn't have, like, there's teams have had these terrible losses to teams that you otherwise wouldn't think they should lose to.
Madness. So every team has embarrassing losses.
Absolutely. So this is a problem this year throughout the NFL. And certainly I think you're right too, that in that we're looking at this offensive line. I don't know that that's a league-wide epidemic entirely, but it's more teams than not are struggling in the trenches. And I'm a big believer you win there. Right. And so that is a big issue for the Bills going forward. But one thing, and this may come off as a hot take, it may not, I want to win this game. Obviously I want Bills to win every game that we get on here and talk about, but I don't think this is a must win. I really don't. Like, if they come out and it's just, they're still flat and drop this game, it's going to suck. Twitter's going to suck. It's going to be terrible to talk about. The media, like, everything's going to feel terrible, but I don't know that it ultimately derails the season still. Like, you don't want to have 2 losses in a row. I think statistically it's not great, but in terms of numbers and analytics, if they get it right in that next 11 days, come out and beat the Patriots and then go on a run, everything can still be okay. And they can still get all the things they want.
The 2 games against the Patriots, if they win both of those, this game doesn't matter. And if they win this game and drop a game to the Patriots, this game doesn't matter. So in the grand scheme of things, they've now given up enough cushion that every win matters. So they can't give up much of anything if they really want to get into the seeding that
they're backed into a corner, but they probably have one more push that they can back into the corner before it's like, oh crap, the whole season's gone.
Yeah, it's going to be, we'll get into it as it goes, and now we're going to be lucky that the season ends with home games against Atlanta and the Jets, but they are in a position now where every win matters, as there's so many other teams kind of jockeying. This week, there's good and bad. There's a ton of playoff leverage matchups. So when you hear people talk about leverage, it's the percentage likelihood that the team that wins increases their likelihood of making the playoffs, and a loss decreases it. This is the most matchups this late in the season where both teams are 500 or better in NFL history. There's a crazy number. So the losing teams are playing each other and the winning teams are playing each other. And that means that there's good and bad. It means that a whole bunch of winning teams are going to get critical, valuable wins, and half of them are going to get critical, hurtful losses that knock them the other way. There's a handful that are some NFC versus AFC. Obviously, Bills are going to be rooting for all the NFC teams and all those matchups, like Buccaneers versus Colts, things like that. But there's a couple others where it's tough. Patriots and Titans, you got to figure out, okay, we kind of want the Patriots to knock the Titans down a notch because we have 2 chances against the Patriots. And the Browns and Ravens, we probably want the Browns to knock the Ravens down a notch. There's some of those where it's going to be really interesting to watch. The Bills are one of them.
Yeah.
The Saints and the Bills are both right there. Neither team can afford a loss. A loss here is going to be really hurtful. A win really helps the other one. This Saints team is desperate, even though they're in a tough spot. So, Aaron, I know we were looking...
Real quick, Eric Ward says, embarrassing that we're even talking about leverage matchups at this point. I get what he's saying, but most years are not like the 2020 Bills, where they had such a lead on the division that at this point in the season, you sort of knew that was coming. We talked about how hard it is to win out the division the way the Bills did last year. And most divisions are tight like this, where teams are talking about these types of leverage wins and that type of seeding that goes into the playoffs. So I do think this is actually, even though the NFL is real weird this year and you have all these 5-4 teams, 5 and whatever teams that are all kind of hanging out right in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 range. I think this is more normal. The greatest thing about the NFL is the parity. We talk about, Greg, we talked offline about how the NBA, you can pretty much figure out how that's going to go every year. And I think I don't pay attention to baseball, but a lot of sports don't have the type of parity that the NFL does. And it's really on full display here in 2021, the parity within the league. And so while it's frustrating because I think our expectations were that they would blow through and win the division hands down, I think this is more common in the NFL than maybe we like to admit in the preseason.
It definitely is, and I think that it's just because it's a rude awakening and a recalibration of expectations doesn't mean that all of a sudden the season is a loss or is some throwaway. Everything that's happened now, including a loss to the Jaguars, a straight up butt whooping to the Colts, none of that will matter if they win a Super Bowl, and they can still win a Super Bowl. That is absolutely on the table. Last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at one point were 7-5, we're 6-4. They had a 38-3 drubbing from the Saints, who beat them both times during the season, and they turned around and beat them in the playoffs. Just because you have embarrassing losses and low points in a season, I know Zach Vaughn, who is over there at Buffalo Fanatics, posted an article that he wrote last year about all the questions that were being asked of Bruce Arians at the point that they were 7-5 about how could you bring in Tom Brady and waste this opportunity, and now look what's happening. They were technically out of the playoffs at that point. Yeah. And that was 12 games into the season. And they ended up turning it around, getting hot at the right time, winning a championship. Now, that's not to say that's what's going to happen here, because
it's hard to do it.
Yeah, that's hard to do. And the Bills could unravel and could go completely downhill here. Sterling, one thing I want to share here and bring up on the screen is the injury report for the Saints. We were talking a little bit before we jumped on. One of the things that Bills fans can at least take some solace with is that, 4 starters for the Saints. Ryan Ramczyk, there's all-pro right tackle.
Nasty.
Two defensive linemen, Marcus Davenport and Tissa Pasanga.
Had a great season.
Both really good rotational defensive linemen. Marcus Davenport just had one of his best games last week. And Alvin Kamara, obviously their top weapon on offense. They were already without Michael Thomas, who hasn't come back. They're without Jameis Winston. They're down, they're choosing to go with Trevor Siemian over Taysom Hill. Also, Terran Armstead is, questionable and has been limited. Mark Ingram also questionable and limited.
They should it's too short of a week. They shouldn't even mess with that.
I wouldn't mind if they would sit both those guys. So, Sterling, when you know the position that we're in and where we're coming at, what are your thoughts when you see an injury report like this for the Saints?
I mean, you got to be licking your chops, man. And it's one of those things where, like last week, Marcus Davenport had a great game against Philly, right? And it's funny because, when you get on Saints Twitter, they talk about how anytime Davenport has a great game, he's injured for like 3 more.
Yeah, yeah. I saw those similar comments.
So you got to be licking your chops. And if there's a game to kind of get right, it's this game. I mean, they're going to be starting Troy Jones Jr. at running back. He's a thicker guy. He's not a burner by any means. But you got to be able to take advantage of these injuries. Just like teams would do the same to the Bills. I mean, not having Spencer Brown. I mean, we know all the the issues that we have, but man, you got to expose them. So not having 2 bookend tackles, that's huge. I don't really think that Terran Armstead is going to play. I just think that's just window dressing at this point. And I really don't think Mark Ingram is going to suit up either. And Mark Ingram, I mean, you mentioned earlier in the show how the Saints and the Colts are very similar, but from a schematic standpoint and how they run their offense and defense, they are very similar. I think we're going to see a lot of the same like trap runs and so forth with this Saints offense. So this is one of those games where the Bills can, kind of get right. as fans, we can look at this and go, okay, this is what happened last week. You're kind of seeing some of the same stuff. Trevor Siemian is a little bit, not as gifted, or whatever you want to call it, as the Colts quarterback. So this is a time where they can kind of get right and kind of, shore some things up. But it all starts in the trenches, man. So from the Bills, I'm licking my chops.
And sort of pivoting off of that, Sterl, I think it's a poor man's version of what we just saw in the Colts, because I think they run a lot of the same concepts, but with the injuries along that offensive line. And if you do add those tackles in it as injuries, they've been playing well, throughout their career and had a good season here so far. But that interior offensive line, it's not the Colts interior offensive line.
I'm going to add in one more. Landon Young is the guy who had been playing for Ramczyk and filling in for there. He's also out for the year. So now you're talking about they may have to play a guy at tackle who wasn't even on the roster. No joke. Like holy crap, hey, we got to call Bobby Hart, Jordan Mills off the street. Right. They may be starting a street free agent at tackle.
Jordan Mills is on their roster somewhere.
If Terran Armstead can play, it'll be Terran Armstead and James Hurst, who Hurst hasn't been good, but he's at least played. He at least has
average
gotten
to
reps.
Above average. Like, he can get some reps in.
Correct. So if they're able to get Armstead and Hurst out there, they will be okay. They will have functional offensive line play out there. If Armstead can't play, the reason that they may not be able to afford to rest him is they literally would be talking about a street free agent because they don't have another tackle on the roster beyond there. They're going to be already bringing up a practice squad elevation just to have their swing tackle as a backup.
Yes, and if you had Ingram behind the Colts interior line, I think that could do some damage to the Bills. I think even if Ingram is healthy behind their interior line of the Saints, I don't know that they're going to be able to get work, even without Starla Tulare, and it's looking like Edmonds is full healthy. So I think while there's similarities between the Colts and the Saints, again, I think it's a poor man's version, especially where it matters the most, in my opinion, on the interior line. And that should be a big day for the interior on the Bills side.
Healthy, full squad, and you're talking healthy Terran Armstead, healthy Ryan Ramczyk, then all of a sudden Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz are solid. They're good. They're above average because they have two all-pro tackles being able to road grade out in front of them. Then when you're average to above average in the interior, it's fine. When you're talking about, street free agents outside of you, then all of a sudden being average in the interior is a challenge. So Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy are legit NFL starters. They're fine.
Yes. It's actually more like the Bills offensive line than it is like the Colts.
Yeah, correct. Honestly, that's actually not crazy at all.
I was thinking it. I wasn't going to say it. But going to your point, man, if you have to start James Hurst, and he's a 6'5", 310-pound tackle, he's slow. He's got slow feet. I mean, you got to be Jerry Hughes.
Jerry Hughes should
show some burst. You got to take advantage of that, man. I'm not on team pressure right now. I want team sacks. Like, get to the quarterback and make a difference, because her pressures aren't cutting it right now. Like, we don't get consistent pressure on the quarterback. So, man, please take advantage.
I got to step in though. It's frustrating because you want sacks, but the Bills also are the number one DVOA defense against the pass, and I know some of that's quarterback play. Like, they have been good against the pass, and pressures have mattered.
So. I listen to a couple other shows.
It matter more. They need to get to the quarterback.
Sure.
So one of my favorite shows is the Ringer Gambling Show. It has Warren Sharp. It has Ben Solak. It has some really, really smart people. They were talking today. I was listening, and I cringe as I hear it. And they talk about how the Bills have the number one pressure defense in the NFL, and it's true. They have the best pass rush win rate. They have the highest pressure rate of getting pressure on the quarterback. And it's almost awesome. And I know that it translates. I know that just getting pressure improves all the things that we brag. Yeah, correct. All the things we brag about on the quarterback rating of our secondary, the QB rating against of all the DBs and how great they are, the turnovers, that's where it comes from. I know that's a piece of it. Also, I would love just the split second more of getting home and some of those big plays that we see because they couldn't take down the quarterback. That's the difference of right now. Everybody talks about the Bills as, hey, we know they're pretty good on defense, but it's actually not as good as it looks, to actually being as good as it looks. Like actually being the top DVOA defense and not like everybody's little asterisks of, technically we know they're number one, but it's really because of that Texans game and the Redskins game and those other games where, we know it's kind of inflated because they really dominated horrible teams and the DVOA doesn't quite adjust enough for the teams that they went against and that it's a little overinflated, and if they played real teams, it wouldn't be that good. That would be the difference. Getting home and actually driving that difference would be the one, and this is going to be the offensive line to try it out against because Trevor Siemian is, I think Sean Payton wants him to be Drew Brees and getting the ball out quickly and being able to make those quick decisions. I don't think he quite has that in him to this point, and I think that, he had his moment there. He had the upset, in a couple good games. He played well against Tennessee. He played well against Atlanta. Last week I think Philly kind of exposed him, and I think that Buffalo needs to do the same this week. And if we see Trevor Siemian look good with Lil Jordan Humphrey and Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway, I'm going to be upset.
I just love hearing you say Lil Jordan.
It's the man's legal name. It's the man's legal name. It's on his birth certificate. The man's legal name is Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah, but to your point about Siemian, though, this is and to you, Aaron, this is the game where pressure rate matters because you have a guy that's not very mobile, and last week he was very indecisive with the ball in his hand, and when pressure came, he just kind of hucked it up. Pressures in games like this, pressures against Tom Brady, those matter. But man, when you have, it's 3rd and long, and you have a guy like Carson Wentz back there. This is just one play I'm bringing up, and it's like, man, you're there. I just need you to make that tackle, and he scrambles for 20 yards or whatever, and it's like, it's heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking.
It is, and I'm not advocating against big plays, right? Like I want big plays. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be. We want sacks, and I don't care about pressures. It all matters, right? Like all that stuff matters, and so I think that argument gets people get sick of hearing about pressures, and you can't say that it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So we want to hit home on them, and I get frustrated. Greg, you and I have gone offline about Jerry Hughes and where his production level is at, and I think everybody's frustrated that Jerry Hughes doesn't get the amount of sacks he has, but the dude still got juice, and he is part of this. What's leading to these pressures, and it does matter on the back end, and so we want to see him get home, and these are going to be the kind of weeks where you have an immobile quarterback that's going to be sitting back there with a bad offensive line. You're going to be able to get those pressures. Now, can they convert some of those into sacks and create some big plays, and some of those sacks turn into strip sacks and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm all that adds to my toxic differential, baby. I want all that. Yeah.
Well, and now you add in, and I know there's frustration with the way that the line of scrimmage was dominated the last game. I know people threw around the term soft and getting pushed around. I think the frustration I have is if you take any team and you take away 4 of their most physical players, 5 if you throw in one more, on the 2 sides of the line of scrimmage, they're all going to look bad. If you give us back Star Lotulelei and Tremaine Edmonds and Justin Zimmer, they don't look the same. Like it's not the same defense if you add those guys back in. We're not going to get Justin Zimmer back, but we are going to get Star Lotulelei and Tremaine Edmonds back. And I'll bring up the injury report here for the Bills.
I want to make one comment on that soft thing real quick while you bring that up. That bothers the crap out of me to make an assertion that any NFL team is soft, first of all. And if you're basing it off that one game, that game to me felt like jiu-jitsu, where they were over aggressive. If anything, I think the Bills' defensive line was playing too aggressive. I think Ed Oliver was way over penetrating.
Yeah, Ed Oliver had too much penetration on several plays.
And they countered it by, okay, you want to get aggressive? We'll allow you and move you out of the way, and we'll run at you. But I don't think it had to do with they aren't physically able and that they are a soft team. I don't buy that.
Well, it's easier. People who played high school football and say, well, I was tough and I would have. It's when you don't understand the nuance of the game and understand how game scripts
countered what they
and how schemes line up. It's easier to say, oh, well, they weren't tough enough. They were soft. It's easier to say that to go that direction.
They have to execute. I mean, it's point blank, plain and simple. You have to win your individual matchups, right? And they're just not consistently doing that. And it doesn't help when you have guys who aren't available. I mean, it sucks, but
but look at this. Look at this. Guys
so now back. The Bills getting back here, the one that we're going to find out tomorrow. We don't know for sure. We don't know anyone's vaccination status. We don't know anyone's status from the COVID IR.
Star should be closed.
From a date standpoint, tomorrow morning, Star Lotulelei is technically eligible to return. We will find out tomorrow, if he is activated, he would be eligible to be activated and to play in the game. If they activate him, it means that he has not had symptoms. It means he's had 2 negative tests.
But
he's now gone the 10 days, and he is now activated and able to play in the game.
Would he have been able to travel today, not being
I don't know the technical
I don't know the
rules of that. I don't know the rules of that. Either way, we will see where that goes. It would be announced tomorrow morning.
Right.
The combination for Spencer Brown, unless there's a major surprise, I am under the impression he will not be eligible tomorrow. We do not know his official status. I know a lot of people have speculated on that. I am under the impression that he will not be eligible no matter what, but that he would be eligible to return for the Patriots game, which would be huge. When you take those two into account, you now add in Cole Beasley is practiced in full and was available. Tremaine Edmonds back and practicing in full. That will be a big one. And then Ronald, bringing up the other name I wanted to bring up here, the Bills officially activated the time window for Marquez Stevenson to be able to be brought back. And I know that's a topic that we wanted to bring up in a segment here for our sponsor, T-Shirt University. So T-Shirt University, you can go out, check out in the show description here. You can check out, they have an exclusive 26 shirts design for the Bills Mafia that's there available in their Walden Galleria store that you can only get in the store. Our T-Shirt University Fresh Look of the Week, one of the names I brought up for a fresh look is, are we ready for Marquez Stevenson here? Aaron, Sterling, you've both been very active in this discussion. I'll start with you, Aaron. Are you ready to see Marquez Stevenson as the primary returner over Isaiah McKenzie? And are you ready for that tomorrow, or are you ready for that this season?
So personally, I am ready to not see Isaiah McKenzie take another kick return or punt return on this team. And we got into it a little bit on Twitter here before the show. And for me, it's not even just the fumble. It's the decision-making throughout the year. I've been calling it the Isaiah McKenzie experience. Every time the ball's in the air, I'm not sure which version of him I'm going to get. Am I going to
anxiety
get
every time?
Awesome, explosive version of Isaiah McKenzie, which I love? Or am I going to get the guy that doesn't run up and grab a kick when he should?
Zero question of the talent when the ball is in his hands. I still want him on the roster. I'm still fine handing him a jet motion. I don't want him back there deciding whether to return kicks.
Absolutely. And so I'm ready to move on from him. My concern here is I think Stevenson's traveling with the team. Either way, I think Sean McDermott's talked about the going through the process and the routine and learning how to be a pro. I think that matters to him. So I think they're bringing him to, this is his first full NFL experience of traveling on the road, going through that process of warm-ups, what to do, all that stuff. Really, those details matter so much to Sean McDermott. So I think that's why you saw the picture of him, that he's coming and they want to activate him here soon. I don't know that they rush to do it here this week. I do believe when he says he has confidence in Isaiah McKenzie, I don't think that's just coach speak. We've seen Sean McDermott and this coaching staff sort of over loyal at points with players. So I believe that they still have.
We've also seen it be coach speak too.
Sure, we have. But I do think that they still have that confidence in him right now. And so I don't know. Either way, I won't be surprised if we see Stevenson, but I could see this being a scenario where they're getting him used to the routine and then they get him back at One Bills Drive for that 11-day stretch. And that's when the transition gets handed over to Stevenson from McKenzie. Maybe they give McKenzie one last shot to solidify himself as that returner. But if McKenzie and Stevenson are activated, then Brian Daboll better utilize Isaiah McKenzie in the offense with that jet motion stuff. Because as much as I don't trust him in the kick return game, I do think he's a valuable weapon that's probably actually more valuable on the offensive side of the ball right now.
Sterling, are you ready for Marquez Stevenson now, later, or never?
I was ready for him to preseason. I mean, we had when we had our our preseason show, the four of us on. I mean, I've been ready for Stevenson. I just think he has great play speed. When we talk about vision from in the kick return game, I think he does a really good job. Now McDermott is always kind of gun shy about rookies in prominent roles, right? But at this point, why not? I mean, you're searching for answers, and it's not only the ball control issues with McKenzie, it's the decision making that's also questionable. That needs to be improved. So they gotta find some juice somewhere, and I don't think it would hurt to have Stevenson back there returning kicks at all.
Yeah, and it comes up that decision making, like you said, it's not simply obviously there's recency bias in watching him literally fumble with no one touching him. He also had another turnover where he was unsure and didn't realize you can never let a kickoff bounce. You can never let a kickoff touch the ground. You have to catch it no matter what. It's a live ball. If it wasn't
for Kumaro, that's a way worse outcome.
Huge turnover that everybody remembers. You have multiple muffs, multiple fumbles, and I get it. There's no question of the talent of Isaiah McKenzie when he gets the ball in his hands. Unfortunately, we've had that before. We had that with Leotis McKelvin. We've had that with other guys. That there are talented people that can run fast with the ball in their hands. It doesn't mean they have the skill and the short-term, immediate decision-making of how to run up and catch the ball and be able to do those things. I want to tell myself that you can learn that and be taught that. Isaiah McKenzie's been around. This is not his first rodeo. We're talking about this is his fifth year in the NFL. We're not talking about
his problems date back to college too.
Yeah, like he's about to be 27 years old. He's been in the NFL since 2017. If he was going to learn that immediate short-term discretion of when to run up and catch the ball or when not to, he would have done it by now. Like, he would have developed that. This is not some 22-year-old kid in his second year. He's been around the block. I don't want to get into a spot where that moment where we're debating, oh my gosh, is he going to take it to the house or is he going to fumble it to the other team, is in the division round against the Patriots. Perfect. And we're trying to figure out, can we make it to the AFC Championship game? Oh, nope, Isaiah McKenzie just fumbled the ball back to the other team. Belichick made us feel bad about it. Oh, tough luck. I guess we'll have to find another returner next year. I'm ready for it. I need somebody back there I can trust. I don't care if it needs to be Matt Breida on kick returns and Micah Hyde fair catching punts. If it's Marquez Stevenson, that's awesome. I hope we can trust him. I don't know that we can trust him either.
I was going to say, we always talk about this, Greg. When people think it can't get worse, it can always. Worse.
George Carlin has taught us, if nothing else. I hate it when people say it can't get worse. What do you mean it can't get worse? Yeah. It can always get worse. Only idiots say it can't get worse.
Yeah.
It's something that's got to be there. The reason we bring this up is explosive plays. And explosive plays is something near and dear to my man Aaron Quinn's heart. Aaron, talk us through the graphic that you put together here that shows us where we compare to explosive plays with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, so we'll go right through both offenses here. Explosive plays, New Orleans, and explosive pass. So this is pass plays of 20 yards or more. They have 25 in the league. That's good for 29th. Not great. They're not pushing the ball down the field, especially with Trevor Siemian. Trevor Siemian actually does do a good job getting the ball down the field when he takes deep passes. They just don't do it. They don't have the weapons to push the ball down the field. So they're not getting a lot of that. They do have 28 explosive runs, which is good for 19th in the league, and that's not great, but it's better than the Bills right now. Actually, I messed that up. The Bills are better in explosive runs as well. I put the line under them, so I shouldn't have done that. But for the Bills right now, explosive passes, they have 35, good for 12th. We see them weekly here, Greg. We didn't see a lot of it last week, but we see them creeping into that top 10. I really do need the Bills here. If they're going to get back to that offense that we saw in that firepower offense, we need to see them crack into the top 10 in those explosive plays. And I think they might have some opportunities here this week, and we'll talk about that in a second. Explosive runs still 17th in the league with 29. So as bad as the run game is, they still are right in the middle of the league and getting the explosive plays. And, this keeps coming up for us is we don't need to run the ball more. We need explosive plays. We need more efficiency from the run game. And so I do think maybe the insert of Matt Breida might lead to some more explosive runs for the Bills.
Speed leads to explosive plays.
It's sure not going to be Zach Moss the way he's running. He's definitely not racking up the explosive run. So that's on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, so for those that can't see the little graphic on there, it ranks first is the most, 32nd is the fewest. So on your defense side of the ball, you want your team to be ranked lower, right? And so for explosive pass plays, the Saints defense is 11th in the league. They've given up 36 explosive pass plays, and which is kind of weird because they actually have some good players on the back end of that defense, and they rush for and they put guys. They have a lot of DBs back there, but they're giving up explosive. So this is a good opportunity for that offense.
It's a top-heavy back. Marshawn Lattimore, Malcolm. So Marshawn Lattimore is a stud.
Good safety play.
He hasn't been playing great this year. Malcolm Jenkins is an all-time great person. He's an awesome spokesman for the NFL. He was a really good player. I'm not 100%
Marcus Williams
if he's
is good,
still
though.
a really good player.
Yeah.
Marcus Williams is good. I do fear that Malcolm Jenkins is just super well respected in the NFL, and I don't know for sure that he still has that same step that he used to.
I mean, teams are pushing the ball on him. So,
Yeah.
and you'll see here in a second that on the other side of the field, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer leading that defensive back is not giving up the explosive plays. And then, but on explosive runs, this is something actually Anthony Prauschka and I were talking about earlier on Twitter, because the Saints are leading in those light box looks. And so he was saying this is going to invite the Bills to run, which I do agree. And I think all teams right now are going to invite the Bills to run, but they are giving up the fewest explosive, or I think they're tied for fewest at 31st in the league with only 21 explosive runs. They're playing the run really well, even with light boxes. And so I do think they'll invite the Bills to run, and I'm not sure that the Bills will be able to do it against them. I haven't seen it yet. So on the Bills side of things, even with that bad performance, they're still 32nd in the league, only giving up 20 explosive pass plays. Yeah. That is a thing. That's a legitimate thing. Last year's defense, when they were struggling before they got hot, they were giving up the big plays. In a Sean McDermott era, that has been the bread and butter of this defense, is not giving up the big plays, making you drive down the field slowly and try to beat them play by play and put together long extended drives. They're still doing that this year. And explosive runs took a hit this last week. Obviously, we were talking about that a little bit offline. Jonathan Taylor was just busting. Explosive runs are ranked as 10-yard runs. And I felt like every time Jonathan Taylor touched the ball, he was going for close to 10 yards. So
it felt like, I felt like half, like I don't even remember what your graphic was last week. Seriously, did he have like more than 6 or 7? Like I feel like he might have had like 8 or 10 of those in that game.
Yeah, if you look at my actual top 5 true toxic differential that I track, Indy was up in that top 5 for a few weeks. Then they dropped down to like 7 or 8, and they bounced right back up this week. And most of it was because of Jonathan Taylor's explosive run. So
he's
definitely hurt them. Yeah, definitely hurt the Bills. But I expect this week that they'll probably not allow too many of those, and probably you'll see them dip again as we go forward.
So, Sterling, as you look at these kind of stats, what are some of the things that you're expecting? How do we limit some of those against the Saints when we're going against them? How do we take advantage of where they are? I don't think all of a sudden we're going to rip off a ton of explosive runs against what has been, short of last week against the Eagles, maybe a little chink in the armor. They had been by far the number 1 run defense in the NFL. Last week, maybe again, a little chink in the armor, and Jalen Hurts' big game. Maybe it's a Josh Allen rushing game. What do you think about that angle? And then how do we limit the big plays? Whereas if there's anything Marcus Callaway can do, he can get deep. You can go either direction with that, with the rushing game or with Callaway limiting him.
So with the Eagles last week with the Saints, they had 3 rushes over 60 yards. And that was due to, a lot of, they were running a lot of, zone reads and stuff like that. And so, and Josh Allen does not run the zone read.
It's not great.
Well. Not very well. So I think, I think our opportunities are kind of little, we're not going to have the same opportunities the Saints had. And then, you look at the Saints defensive line, there's one guy in particular that's killer at stopping the run. That's David Omiyata. He is a dog when it comes to stopping the run. I honestly, I think outside, from a run standpoint, he's their best defensive lineman in stopping the run. I mean, he just plugs it up. He's always technically sound, and just watching the Saints play, not just last week, but just watching his tape, man, he's coming along. He's coming along really well. So I think having Breida is the difference. So I think we need to see a little bit more Breida when it comes to running the ball and testing them on the outside. There's opportunities to be had, especially if you're going to do a light box. I think from an offensive standpoint for the Bills, it's the part of the problem is not that the offensive line is extremely bad, right? It's just when in those situations, I think our running backs lack the vision and foot speed to make a difference, to take advantage of those small windows opportunities that the offensive line does present. I think from a fan standpoint, people say, well, the line is just trash. They're not doing anything. That's not entirely true. There's always somewhere in the middle, and there's opportunities, but, even Eric had a couple plays that he highlighted where the hole's right there, but Moss, Singletary, they're just not hitting them consistently. And so you can't put all the blame on offensive line. So let's let Breida give it a shot. Hopefully he tries to take it, up the middle or through those, those holes, but and not try to CJ Spiller and bounce it outside every time. That's one of my fears with him. I just hope that he's able to take advantage of what he sees.
I think Aaron and I spoke that into existence too much in the preseason. We said it when we were in the stadium watching him, because I won't lie, he did have some CJ Spiller-ish moments where, like, oh God, don't be that guy. You don't always have to try to get it around the corner. But Aaron, we talked about wanting to spotlight this week. I think Sean McDermott talked about the opportunity he's going to get more carries here. When we spotlight, our Uncle Jumbo spotlight player of the game, enjoy some Uncle Jumbos. I'm enjoying some myself right now. What do you think Matt Breida could bring to this game? And when you hear more opportunity, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so this is interesting to me because I do think Breida has taken his touches and earned more opportunity, but I also think it correlates with Zach Moss being a descending player and losing opportunity. I think Zach Moss very much was given an opportunity to have that job, and he's lost it. So I think that's a thing we also have to talk about here, because that's a bummer. We really were banking on Zach Moss to come in and be that 1-2 punch with Singletary, and it's feeling like that draft pick is slipping away in terms of productivity. And so that's kind of a bummer for the Bills. But now Breida has an opportunity, I think, to take that position and run with it here this year. And I agree. In the preseason, I was a little worried about that CJ Spiller thing, because I get in this argument with people all the time about, people just throwing out there, we need speed. We need that trait of speed. And I agree, but speed sometimes
I like speed.
I do like speed, but sometimes it's not enough of a trait. You need vision. You need other traits to go along with speed. And we've seen that happen in the NFL a number of times, where you just have speed guys and they're one-trick ponies and they don't have that ability. What we saw out of Breida, again, he's an imperfect back, but that one run where it went for like 20-something yards, we saw him set up that safety and bounce outside. Right. Like, that's not just pure speed. That's vision. That's understanding blockers. That's understanding leverage.
It's encouraging.
Yes, if he can put that together with a little bit more consistency, I love that. And then if we can get some more of what we saw in that preseason game from Dable manufacturing him touches in some different ways, then I think that adds a whole nother layer to this offense that we're haven't been able to see so far, that we were maybe expecting to see with Isaiah McKenzie, but he's been pulled out of that role due to his kick return needs. And so they've taken that load on the offense off of him. But, Stephon Diggs is a true wide receiver. They're not going to run any of that special type of manufactured stuff with him. Cole Beasley's not going to get you that type of stuff. There really aren't those weapons on this offense. And Breida has the ability to be that guy where you find him an extra 4 to 5 manufactured touches outside of run plays. And that's what I'm excited. I think it does open up some stuff for Brian Dable, if he is that guy that showed the flashes of what we saw in the Colts game.
Yeah, and I'm not ready to, like I said, I mean it genuinely. I don't want Isaiah McKenzie cut. I don't want him off the roster. I'm not trying to be ridiculous. If for some reason they went to the point of, hey, we're going to pivot more strongly here, and he is a game day inactive where you make Marquez Stevenson the returner, we saw it in that Packers preseason game. They can manufacture those jet sweep touches, those quick bubble screens, those quick outlet passes to Matt Breida. I'm not opposed to that either way. I don't need it to be instead of Isaiah McKenzie. I'd love it to be in addition to Isaiah McKenzie. I want more manufactured outside touches. Again, that was actually a big point that Ben Solak brought up on that show I was listening to earlier, and they talked about the benefit, and I'll encourage everyone to go listen. Shale Kapadia wrote a really good article in The Athletic about what's wrong with the Bills, and he explained a ton of things that are just randomly unlucky with the Bills, and that last year in one-score games they were 4-1. This year they're 0-3. If you pivot around just a couple of those games, if they convert that fourth down and Josh Allen doesn't slip on that fourth down quarterback sneak, and a couple of just little other small plays here, that block punt doesn't happen against the Steelers, all of a sudden you're talking about, oh, hey, the Bills are 8-2. They're the number 1 seed. They're easily everybody's Super Bowl favorite. Those are very quick, fluky things. They had really unlucky fumble luck. They have really unlucky interception luck on some plays where Josh Allen has had some plays. They've been in huge leverage situations that normally balance out in the scheme of things, and he rattled through. The biggest one is fourth down conversions. The Bills still have a really good offense. They're 3 out of 10 in fourth down conversions. Last year they were 8 out of 10. So when you talk about, oh my gosh, is Sean McDermott more conservative? Well, 3 out of 10, I'd be a little anxious too. Those are things that are all going to regress.
I still need the context
back
of those.
to the mean. That those things are going to normalize over the grand scheme of things. The Bills are not a 30% conversion rate team. They are more talented than that. They're going to convert more than that down the stretch. A lot. He rattled off, it was 8 different factors that the Bills have been relatively unlucky and that that is very likely are going to progress back towards the mean over the rest of the schedule. And that those are reasons you should not give up on the Bills. They are still very talented. They're still his pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. And he was explaining why over a really well-written article. You add that to people like Warren Sharp and Ben Solak talking about the same thing. Like, hey, everybody falls for recency bias. This is still a really good team. They're missing 4 of their most physical players that are all expected to come back. We're expecting to get Spencer Brown and Tremaine Edmonds and Star Latuile, and whatever you think about John Feliciano, he's at least another healthy body to have in there to rotate into the interior offensive line.
You're talking to me.
I'm speaking directly to you. That whatever you think about him as a player, he's still a physical element of this team, and it's still not a negative thing to add him in there when you're talking about Cody Ford potentially playing at guard. All those factors coming back around, there are reasons to still be optimistic here and to be looking for those things. One of the biggest things they brought up is, hey, whether it's Matt Breida, whether it's Zach Moss, whether it's Devin Singletary, we're not all of a sudden going to become Jonathan Taylor. What you can do is more intelligent manufactured rushing, which can be quick bubble screens to Cole Beasley, jet sweeps to Isaiah McKenzie, quick swing passes to Matt Breida, quarterback powers to Josh Allen.
Runs.
Add those different pieces up, and you can have the manufactured efficiency of a run game in 35% of your offense to keep the defense honest so that the 65% of your offense continue to whip ass like it does the rest of the season. That's what I want to see. Just be creative, get a little bit of that back in there, and then I think it'll let the play action work. It'll let the rest of the offense go, and I think that we'll see them get that right going back into this week. Sterling, what are you hoping to see some changes in getting back to our roots for this game?
Yeah, I just want to see more consistency, but from the passing game standpoint, I just, want to see Josh not try to press too much, throw the ball downfield, and Dable kind of just work in some of those manufactured throws, those short throws to kind of keep the chains moving, get Beasley a little bit more involved, look to Stephon Diggs a little more, but just take what the defense is giving you. They're going to see a lot of that 2 high safety looks tomorrow. Saints that's what they do. So, like I said, if there's a game to get right, this is it. This is where you can show yourself and everybody else, hey, this is what we've been working on this week, and this is how we're going to get better, and to defeat these things that kind of, change the narrative of what teams and media and fans, what everybody thinks. So, yeah, just take what the defense is giving you. I mean, it's not that hard. I think they'll do it.
And we saw. Oh, Greg, you're still on mute. We did see. I think there is some recency bias of what this Bills offense looks like. But if you do watch back that Colts game, that first drive they're moving the ball, and some unfortunate penalties get that out of position, and then you get a not called DPI on Rock Ya-Sin that turns into an interception, which whatever, I can live with that. But then they get the ball back and are moving down again. And then that we talked about it a little bit offline, Sterling, that you're down 17-7 and you get a fumble that turns into a touchdown. You get 2 touchdowns within less than 1 minute span. That's a ultimate. You went
killer. From a low likelihood to a backbreaking no.
Correct. And going against the team that runs the ball, it's hard to get the ball back and all those things. Just it was an imperfect storm for them. But that offense was moving the ball and on a number of different looks against a good defense. So I do think, as bad as that game was and how it unraveled for Josh in the end, there was still some stuff in the beginning of that game that told me, hey, when they're sticking to the script and they're hanging in the game, that this offense can still move the ball on anybody.
Yeah. So as we get ready for our game predictions here, Aaron, before we give our score predictions, why don't you walk us through how the matchup lines up from a DVOA standpoint between these two teams?
Yeah, so we'll look at we'll start at overall right now. So DVOA from Football Outsiders. What I love about DVOA, I think there's been some confusion because this last week I was saying, going into last week's game, the run defense was third in the NFL, and people, well, they didn't play anyone. Well, that's what DVOA has, that sort of built-in opponent, what type of weather you're playing in. It's a stat that has adjusted for context, right? And that's why I like it more than
defensive value over adjusted. Like it's actually it is adjusted already for the opponent.
For the opponent, and like in the kick game for the weather, they take a lot of context into it. So that's why I don't use the NFL.com yards stats to rank defenses or anything like that. This has real context. So for anyone that doesn't know what DVOA is, I check out Football Outsiders. They do great work. They have good data.
Sorry, I read that wrong. Defense adjusted value over average. That is the
value
DVOA.
Over average. Yes.
Defense adjusted value over average.
Yes. So overall, New Orleans 9th in the league overall right now, which shocked me a little bit, having seen some of their games and stuff like that. I was shocked to see they were 9th overall, but we'll get to
higher
why.
Than I would have expected.
Yeah, and it's a little weird. It's a little inflated, and it has to do with some of the run defensive stats that we saw earlier. Bills still, even after that terrible loss and losing to the Jaguars, they're still 5th right now in overall DVOA. I think that matters. Fans that are jumping ship and saying this season's lost, like I do believe that matters. They're still a top team in the NFL right now, according to these types of numbers. Offense, this one's concerning for me. Offense, New Orleans right now is 17th overall. And again, that is their 9th in the pass and 23rd rushing. So they're a little weighted on the pass side of things. Buffalo is 18th, and they were trending in the right direction last week. We saw them getting a little bit closer to the top 10. They went back this past week, and they're 18th overall. You don't like to see that, especially when we know what this offense is capable of. So if they are going to go on this run here this year and make that special run in the playoff, they got to get this better on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, New Orleans is 5th in the NFL, and this is super top heavy here because I've got it. They are 1st rush defense and 14th pass defense. So it's super top heavy that they are a really good rush defense, even though they have those light boxes. They're not giving up the explosive plays. Like Sterling said, they gave up those explosive last week, but that was Philly is doing a really good job in toxic differential. They have crept to the top in toxic differential in the top 5 every week here for the past 3 weeks because of what Jalen Hurts and how he runs those zone options and stuff like that. So I think that hurt them, but it's not indicative of who they are. Bills are still, even after that terrible performance against the Colts, where the Colts offense just went up and down the field on them, the Bills still end up 1st in DVOA. And again, guys, this is adjusted for the opponents that they've played. So I don't want to hear, well, they haven't played anybody yet, because it does adjust for that. And they are still the 1st, and they're 1st in pass. And they did bump down. They're 12th in rush. And that's the Jonathan Taylor effect. Jonathan Taylor just dropped them down from 3rd to 12th. So there you go. The biggest drop for the Bills this past week, though, we'll look at special teams here. New Orleans 14th. Special teams for the Bills 18th. Going into last week, they were 3rd, I believe we were talking about last week. They jumped into the top 10 all of a sudden. They were 3rd. We're playing great consistency. Last week was just a special teams nightmare. You had
giving up nasty returns, missing 2 kicks, fumbling a kick return. Amazingly, that drops you in the ratings.
It dropped you to 18. So actually, in DVOA, this game is a lot closer than I think. When I started digging into these numbers, I didn't think it would be as close as this. Sterling, looking at this and having looked at the Saints, do these numbers surprise you at all?
No, those numbers don't surprise me at all. I want to see what they look like in the pass game. Trevor Siemian, this will be his 4th start. I'm just not sold on how, keeping their offense on time, on schedule, not having Kamara, not having, probably, their other running back, Ingram. They're going to have some issues, and their offensive line is in shambles. So, but it's spot on. And I actually used this on our pod last night, actually, thanks to you, Aaron.
Yeah, man, good.
Because it's good stuff, man. I mean, you don't really account for, that adjusted numbers, that rate, right? Because people say, well, you haven't played anybody. Well, this accounts for that. So, but those numbers definitely look good. And, when you watch the Saints run defense, it does stick out. Last week, again, is different. But if you go back and you start watching, and these guys, they're really sound against the run. So the Bills are going to have their hands full. I think the Bills are a better team offensively than 18th, though. I think when everything's firing, this is one of the top 3 offenses in the league. So when you don't have the consistency of having a Spencer Brown in there, and you're kind of having to replace 2 positions for one, that hurts. That's going to hurt you. So I'm anxious to see. I think the Bills are going to have a really good output from the offense tomorrow. So I'm not saying they're going to blow them out or anything like that, but I think the offense is going to play really well.
Why don't we start right there, Stars? We'll put you on the spot. Give us your game prediction. What do you expect, and what's the score?
I'm going to say 30-20. I think Josh Allen's going to have about 270 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. I think Breida is going to have a decent game, maybe 60 yards rushing on 8 carries or something like that.
Aaron, how about
I think this evening ends with Josh Allen eating more turkey. I think he's going to be eating some turkey here on Thanksgiving again. I think, we've talked about it a lot, that the loss to the Titans, that was going to be their get-right game after that. The loss to the Jaguars was finally going to wake this team up. I think the way that they were embarrassed against the Colts, if this doesn't do it, I don't know if this team is going to wake up. If you don't wake up from that beating to an AFC team, a playoff caliber AFC team, and the type of embarrassment that this team has had to face because of that beating, I don't know if they'll wake up, guys. And so this really, while I said they can drop this game in terms of analytics and mathematics, I believe that they have to get this one right for their mentals. I think that they need to go out and prove this is an above 500 team. Like you said, this is an uncommon opponent. These are hard games. You're on national TV. You have a chance to, back up the Warren Sharps of the world, the article you referenced. You have a chance to back that up, that the Bills still are in contention for the Super Bowl. And so I think they do that. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I have it 24-17. But I do think, what, you got the same?
Same.
Okay, I got it 24-17. I think the Bills are able to move the ball pretty well, but I do think Saints get some scores on them. But I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I don't know that the Saints ever get it close. I think maybe the Saints score at the end, and it seems maybe a little bit closer than it is. But Vegas is pretty good at what they do, so that's why I had it where it was.
So it's funny. All year, we've been pretty close. We're always like a couple points off here or there.
Sure.
It's the first time all season we've genuinely had the exact same score prediction.
Happy Thanksgiving.
So I also have it 24-17. I think that I want Sterling to be right. I think Spencer Brown matters more than we want him to. I think John Feliciano matters more than Aaron wants him to. I think that the offense is going to get closer to right. I'm excited for 11 days from now. Yeah. I'm excited for 11 days from now when everybody's healthy and we get rolling against the team I really want to show our best football against. All I care about tomorrow is get a win. I don't need it to be impressive. I don't need style points. I don't need you to impress the judges. Get a win. Stay healthy, come home. It's all I care about. I want it to be super simple. Stay to your fundamentals. Do what we're good at. Limit a limited team who doesn't have their fastball right now. Don't let them lean into anything that they saw last week. Don't let them try to get any ideas that a limited Mark Ingram and Tony Jones Jr. can try to become Jonathan Taylor. They can't. Get those ideas out of their head. I want to get this team right. I want to get healthy. I don't care if it comes home 9-6 and they have some hideous, horrible win. Just get me a W.
Just win, baby.
Home. Just win, baby. That's all I care. Find a way to get this dub. Bring it home to me, and we'll get right for the Patriots. I care about that game an awful lot.
Yeah.
You've been listening to an awesome show here tonight. The chat has been fantastic. I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your family. Eat way too much food, have a couple extra pieces of pie, then take a nap, then wake up and get ready for this Bills game. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be prime time. We're going to be ready for you. Check out our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's. Awesome stuff going on there. We can't wait for their tasting room to open on Elmwood. T-Shirt University, they have all the best stuff for you. NFL gear, Bills gear, Sabres gear, everything for you.
Yep.
Walden Galleria, you can see them at tshirtuniversity.com. Even better stuff at the store at the Galleria. Exclusive 26 shirts designs over there. Underdog Fantasy, use promo code COVER1. Thank you to our man Sterling Furrowh. Make sure you check him out at Furrowh Sterling on Twitter. See him at the Hoof, one of the fantastic hosts on the Cover One Network. You can find Aaron Quinn on Twitter at AaronQuinn716. But on behalf of Sterling and Aaron, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.